This is Burke File with Victoria Burke.
That it is interesting, the tone and his reaction to what they're saying, because actually I think what they're asking for is, you know, on the level of what most groups ask for. And to quote Frederick Douglass, you know, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. So that's what groups do. I don't care whether it's the NRA, I don't care if it's APAC, I don't care if it's the NAACP, I don't care if it's the national whatever, and now or NARAL or Planned Parenthood. When you go and have one of these meetings, you make demands, you ask for things. That's just how it is. But the president-elect's reaction to them asking for certain things or making certain observations or saying, hey, I think we should do this or that, is a tad what I would define as defensive. And we're going to listen. This is right after Derrick Johnson, who's the president of the NAACP, speaks, that Biden starts talking.
Your nominees. We have an opportunity here. And we want to make sure we seize upon this opportunity and allowing for the input necessary. 10 more appointments to go. A lot of people in our community are getting a little anxious because they are not seeing enough of the progress they thought they would have seen at this point.
Keep in mind, this was probably before Congresswoman Marcia Fudge was named to HUD, and it was probably before Austin was named at DOD. So when he says 10 slots left, if this meeting was last week, he may not have been including those numbers. Just keep in mind.
Let's not disappoint them, and let's not get to a place where voters in Georgia begin to second guess.
Okay, let me respond. I've got to go. Let me respond. There's a lot to respond to here. Let's get something straight. You shouldn't be disappointed. What I've done so far is more than anybody else has done this far. Okay, number one. Number two, I mean what I say when I say it. I mean what I say when I say it. I'm the only person who's ever run on 3 platforms that I was told could not possibly win the election, and I never ceased from it. One was on restoring the soul of this country because of what I saw happen in Charlottesville. That was it. No one else was talking about it. The words of presidents matter. Nobody else, no progressive, was talking about it. I did. My son Bo used to have an expression. He'd say, remember, Dad, home base. It ain't worth the job if I can't say what I believe. I didn't want to run this time. I ran this time because of the racist son of a gun who was president of the United States of America.
So it's interesting that he says that the reason he ran was Charlottesville. We have to do a little bit of research on that. I'm not saying he's lying. I'm just saying that my sort of recollection on what motivated him to try to run the first time, which was 2016, Charlottesville had not happened yet. So what makes you wonder what motivated him to run the first time. Remember, this is a man who's run for president twice, right? I think twice or maybe even 3 times. So you wonder, well, what does motivate somebody to be president? Typically, it's just that they want to be president. He was the vice president, so of course he wants to be president. You know, so that's an interesting thing that he said there, though.
America. That's why I ran. And you'll remember, a lot of you told me talking about the soul of America was going over people's heads. They didn't know what we're talking about. The words of a president matter. What a president says matters. And you've never seen me shy away. In the middle of the debate, I called him a racist. In the middle of the debate with him, I took on white supremacists. I'm the guy that took on every single time somebody was threatened in this country. The only white boy you know who did it, period, out there. Every single time. So
I don't know if it's the only white boy we know. Again, we have to, we got to go look at that. We got to go really take a very close look at that. It's funny because I just saw Mark Warner at a political rally in October call what the president was doing racist. I'm trying to remember his exact wording. Of course, in fairness, a president like Biden is referring to the period around Charlottesville and the run up to his election this year in 2020. Again, it's going to take a little research. I suspect he was not the only one, though. If I had to guess off the top of my head, I would suspect he was not the only one. But again, it's something that has to be looked at.
So look, all I'm saying here is, guys and ladies, we're on the same exact page. We talked about closing the racial wealth gap. That's the single biggest thing I want to get done. It's the ultimate equalizer, no matter what else happens. Because I plan on spending over $15 billion to provide for opportunity for young Black entrepreneurs to get them off the ground, Black farmers to be able to own their own property, young people being able to get their first $15,000 down payment on a home, making sure that they have an opportunity to gain wealth. We can do all the rest of this unless the Black community is able to make up the wealth gap, in my humble opinion, is real trouble. I support same-day registration. I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years as a United States Senator. Before, Sherrilyn, you were even involved. I got it. I started off, I'm much older than you. That's why I got involved in politics. The assault on the Black vote and voting rights across the nation has never been more ugly than it is today. You got to go all the way back to the original Jim Crow to get where this guy is. If in case you haven't looked, we have the largest voting right, Kirsten, my operation, 1,000 lawyers, bigger than you or anybody else out there on voting rights. 1,000 in this campaign. Not a joke. 1,000. So I want you to know, I understand this. I know, look at the 38 cases that have been brought against my being president of the United States. All about phony actions. And so I think more prisons. I have a $20 billion effort that I'm proposing to get states to change their sentencing guidelines.
Again, the defensiveness is interesting to me because what these civil rights leaders were talking about in the run-up to this moment in the meeting is what any group of advocates on any issue would talk about, which is the things that are important to us, the things we want to see you do, the things that we'd like to see happen, the fears that we have if they don't happen, et cetera, and so on. And he's very defensive. He's very like, why do I have to explain myself? And then he, of course, runs down his entire civil rights record in the House in the Senate. And, that's an interesting question because, of course, we know that obviously Joe Biden was very deeply involved in the Clinton crime bill. So when he mentioned his time on Senate Judiciary, I kind of chuckled to myself about that one. He's never been the guy that was, for the type of restorative social justice that we talk about all the time today. He was really a throwback on that policy. He was the lock 'em up, throw away the key guy. So that's interesting to hear, that part of it. I'm not saying that Joe Biden, is against voting rights or anything, but it is interesting. I just think it's just generally interesting to watch this part for the overall defensiveness. It's kind of like, are you telling me that when Planned Parenthood and NARAL and AIPAC and it wouldn't be the NRA, but if you had a meeting with the NRA or if you had a meeting with some of the groups on the right, they're going to come in and they're going to ask for what they want, from you. Like, why should they be shy about that? Somehow when civil rights leaders come in and talk about, equality and economic issues with regards to the wealth gap and voting rights and anything that involves any sort of racial disparity, there's all this defensiveness. Now it's defensive time. Now, oh my God, I'm mad that you brought these things up. What group goes to a meeting and doesn't bring those things up that are most important to them? But somehow when Black civil rights leaders come in, they got to apologize for bringing their stuff up. They've got to apologize for strongly saying, okay, I want to see this happen. And I think that to me is slightly ridiculous, quite frankly, because any meeting, that's what happens. As somebody who's worked in the federal government, I've worked in state government, federal government, and I've been in the press for quite a while. And I've been in a lot of these meetings. It was kind of funny. One of the funniest things that happened, I was a member of the press on Capitol Hill some years ago. And John Conyers had two members of the press, me and another Black reporter, in on a meeting on Black farmers that we had no business being in, but he was the chair. He didn't care. He's chair of judiciary. He let us come in the meeting. So we saw the meeting firsthand. And, it was a meeting of people making demands, as it should have been, and people asking questions. And that's how meetings are. That's how advocacy works, right? But it's funny when advocacy is done by these groups, It's like, oh my God, how dare you be asking for stuff? like what are you doing? And what I heard, I mean, I got to go back and listen very carefully. I don't think I missed anything though. But what I heard from all those civil rights leaders was what they should have been doing and should have been saying. Derrick Johnson is not the president of NAACP to come into a meeting and ask for nothing. Okay, that's not what his job is. He's an advocate for the oldest civil rights group in this country, right? So, I mean, he's not supposed to come to a meeting and not ask for something and not say to the president-elect of the United States and the vice president, these people are going to be the most powerful people in the world in 39 days. His job is not to come into the meeting and not say anything and, I think I'll just not ask for anything. I mean, that's nonsense. And nobody who's a good advocate would ever do that. So all this attitude that Biden is showing, I'm just going to say it's interesting.
Across the board. And I like you, the idea, Kirsten, that everybody has to be a prosecutor. I'm a public defender. When I'm president of the United States of America, we're going to see to it the public defenders, federal defenders, get paid the same as federal prosecutors. Mm-hmm. So we can attract people. There's a whole range of things I guess I'm trying to say here. We have an equity task force. Her entire job is to deal with the inequity that exists because of racial discrimination. And Ms. Campbell, that's what this is all about, making sure that. You may remember, I'm the first person, black or white, who called attention to the fact that you were finding that there was the rate of people who were African Americans who were dying was 3 times that of white people. That's because a friend of mine, a white guy who happens to be, as you well know, Derrick, the mayor of the city of Detroit, called me to tell me about it. I insisted that we keep a record on everything that happened since then. Guys, guess what I'm saying, guys, is, I mean what I say. The hard part here is I'm going to have a lot of trouble. We're going to have a lot of trouble getting a lot of this done with this Congress. And so the question is, for example, I'm going to be appointing at least, and look, the reason I'm not telling you who the other black maybe cabinet positions I'm going to appoint are is because it'll get out. And guess what? I can't defend them. They're going to be out there by themselves without any defense before their name. They're going to get ripped to shreds. That's why I'm going to wait. You will be pleased, I believe. You will be pleased to see there'll be more African Americans in major positions within a cabinet in major spots and more Hispanics in major spots than ever in American history.
Now that remains to be seen. Now, I think it was President Clinton that had 5. And, it's not just the number as it is the position. Obviously, Secretary of Defense is huge. That almost counts for 2 picks right there, because that is, in fact, of course, the hugest budget in the federal government. The HUD decision on fudge and the Vilsack decision on ag was interesting. That was really interesting. Vilsack is not a well-liked character in the circles of African-American leadership at all. It's an example of, I think, the Obama people prevailing on Biden, and somehow all these Obama people keep popping up. And that's an interesting decision. But, if he hits 5 people, all right, but let's see who they are, where they are, and what's going on. DOJ is a biggie. I mean, I think my top 3 for African-American policy is really Treasury, DOJ, and ag. And of course, Treasury is huge. And it is sort of almost this unwritten law that you can't have somebody black at Treasury, at the top of Treasury. Obviously, he's already picked Janet Yellen. His number 2 is a Nigerian American, but, that's not bad at all. It's just an interesting thing that he says he's going to have more than anybody else. We shall see. We have to count. We have to see toward the end. These things have been sidetracked a little bit by discussions about Rahm Emanuel and Tom Vilsack. I mean, once people start hearing that, they're like, really? I mean, you want to talk about guys that don't value equity and don't seem to care about anything having to do with African Americans, that would be the duo. And Vilsack already proved that to us. I mean, it wasn't like it was an open question. And obviously, when it comes to the question of former Chicago mayor and former Congressman Rahm Emanuel, we're talking about a situation where he hid the tape to a police brutality incident. And so nobody in the African-American community was particularly thrilled about that, nor should they have been. I actually wondered why Rahm Emanuel came up in the first place. Like, I couldn't figure out, why are we talking about Rahm Emanuel? Like, how did that happen at transportation? And then, there was some mention of him being a trade, and, why was that happening? So that was an interesting thing. And I think that's the Obama people, because what else could it be? Why would anybody be sitting in the Biden camp saying, well, yeah, let's have Rahm Emanuel? Like, so that was an interesting one.
That's going to happen. I promise you that. And the other example, when we went ahead and we made sure that, I have as, the Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, but at number 2 is Wally Adeyemo, an African-American, who is the number 2 guy with real authority at that department. Look underneath just what we're doing in addition to the people we've already named. You're going to see people, look, and, Cecilia Rouse, CC, she is a significant player. That's a serious position. But it's like when I name it, well, I don't know whether that counts. I'm not so sure. Well, if it doesn't count for y'all, well, the hell with y'all. But because it's real, it's real. So all I'm saying is look at us, judge us based on what we do. You're going to see more coming your way. And not only that, within the White House as well. Cedric is the best. Cedric's been with me from the beginning. And Cedric is going to be overseeing a great deal of this. And not all, he's in every single meeting. He's an assistant to the president. He's in every single meeting in the White House, period. And so what we're going to be doing here is making sure that we have diverse hiring, not only and for the main cabinet position and the sub-cabinet positions, but down the line. It's going to make a big difference, and within the White House as well. But we're going to have more women than men, as it's looking like now. Okay, that's good, because I'm surrounded by women smarter than me, starting off with my wife and my sister that I said. And here's the thing, and Reverend Al, I think you're right about this. It matters what a president says.
Okay, well, I think the Intercept kind of buried the lead on that one, right? If this isn't enough for y'all, well, in the hell with y'all. Like, why didn't that quote get out sooner? So that's an interesting one. Let me time code that. Let's go back a little bit and listen.
This because of racial discrimination. And Ms. Campbell, that's what this is all about. Making sure that, you may remember, I'm the first person, black or white, who called attention to the fact that you were finding that there was the rate of people who are African Americans are dying was 3 times that of what? Number 2 is Wally Adeyemo, an African American, who is the number 2 guy with real authority at that department. Look underneath just what we're doing in addition to the people we've already named. You're going to see people, look, and Cecilia Rouse, CC, she is a significant player. That's a serious position. But it's like when I name it, well, I don't know whether that counts. I'm not so sure. Well, if it doesn't count for y'all, well, the hell with y'all. But because it's real.
This is Burke File with Lauren Victoria Burke.
Just straight up brazen